Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's presentation. This evening's presentation has been organized by SEAC. My name is Andrea Gage. I'm a principal at Chelsea Elementary School. And I'd just like to make sure everyone is aware that tonight's presentation is being recorded. So tonight's presentation has been organized, as I said, by SEAC. The Quebec Education Act stipulates that all school boards must establish a committee, a board called SEAC. And we're going to go to our next slide. SEAC is a special education advisory committee. So we are an advisory group made up of parents, school staff, and representative of our Director General. And SEAC advocates for the success of students with special needs within our schools. And we see success as individuals meeting their full potential in a supportive environment. So the Western Quebec, through diverse and inclusive academic and social learning opportunities, we want students to feel engaged, enjoy school, develop confidence, and a sense of competence and independence. We know and recognize that success for students with special needs requires the learning communities to value empathy, equity, accountability, early intervention, flexibility, and a student-first approach. So this evening's event, organized by SEAC, is hosting our special, I'd like to introduce our special guest for the night. So we have Dominique Chabot joining us, and we're going to get an introduction about Dominique in just a minute. Welcome, Dominique. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce Kim Kortsidis, who is our Vice President of SEAC, and she is going to do our land acknowledgement as well as go over some housekeeping items. So over to you, Kim.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm Kim Kortsidis, and I have children that go to Sims Darcy, and I've been on SEAC for a number of years now. I just like to do the land acknowledgement. So we in the Western Quebec School Board acknowledge and are grateful that we live, work, learn, and play on a traditional, unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. In the spirit of reconciliation and working together, Autism Canada as a nationwide organization is thankful for this land, the country of Canada, and the connections to land, sea, and community. We jointly pay respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all today. And I would like to do, just to give some housekeeping rules for tonight. So during the presentation, I would ask that all audios be disenabled. Attendees will have access to the chat to share reflections on the webinar, share any concerns or technical questions that may arise with our support team. And then we'll have, after the guest speaker is done speaking, we'll have questions that can be shared using the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. Questions will be collected throughout and will be answered at the end of the presentation. After this evening's presentation, the event will eventually be posted on the new SEAC webpage of the Western Quebec School Board's website, which is under construction. A slide with resources listed will be shown at the end of the presentation. At the end of the presentation, a link to an evaluation form will be posted in the chat. We would appreciate you completing it, as this will inform future SEAC initiatives. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce our chair of SEAC, Melinda, and she will introduce the guest speaker.
Good evening. Welcome to this evening's first ever parent caregiver support event hosted by the Special Education Advisory Committee. My name is Melinda Vowley. I am this year's chair of the SEAC committee. I am a mother of a son who has autism, who attends Adhd, and I'm excited along with the SEAC committee to host this event. Before I begin, I would like to thank all the SEAC members who are participating tonight, behind the scenes and those who have already presented. At the start of this year, SEAC decided it wanted to hear from and be more of a support to families of students with special needs. This is so that we can actively fulfill the Education Act mandates for SEAC, so we can advise the school board. It's hard to do that if we never interact with parents outside of our small committee, so we decided to reach out. This evening, we started to do just that. Our speaker this evening is Dominique Chabot. Dominique is the Family Support Manager for Autism Canada, as well as a mom to 2 sons who are on the autism spectrum. The history of Autism Canada is one rich in education, advocacy, support, and unwavering dedication to improving the lives of individuals on the autism spectrum and their families. Autism Canada is the only Canadian autism advocacy organization with a national perspective on the issues currently facing those with ASD, their families, and other stakeholders. Dominique has come to share her experience and expertise with us tonight so that families can thrive and we can all add tools to our toolkit in relating to and advocating for those extraordinary individuals. Thank you for being here, Dominique. We are looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Great, thank you. My name is Dominique. I am the Family Support Manager with Autism Canada. I've been with the organization for 3 years, and prior to that, I've worked as a resource coordinator for a local agency called Rachel's Kids, where we would help families and raise funds to help them with tools, specialized equipment, anything of those, and advocate for special needs during meetings, similar to what the SEAC does, only as an agency. I'm very, very happy to be here, and thank you so much for having me. I'd like to go over a few a few points that in speaking with some of the members from the SEAC committee, I feel it's important to share, only because I think one of the important parts of working or being a parent to someone on the spectrum, as well as being an educator to children on the spectrum, there needs to be a collaborative effort between the two in order for the child with exceptionalities to thrive. So a little bit of background. I am a mom of 2. I have a 15-year-old Kalem who is on the autism spectrum, diagnosed as what would be considered level 3 today, but back then, 14 years ago when he was diagnosed, it was borderline severe. He did not start speaking until he was 7. And it was a very, very long and difficult road. He is now 15. He speaks 3 languages. He does YouTube videos. He has a little business. He's an advocate. He speaks in presentations to schools and to businesses, and he talks and talks and talks and talks. So we've come a long way with him. His little brother is Samuel, and he's 7. Also diagnosed on the autism spectrum, but along those lines of a level 1, which would have been considered back in the day Asperger's or high function, if you will. So as most of you probably know, the autism spectrum has kind of realigned all of the diagnosis. So at one point it used to be Asperger, PPD, and OS, Rett's, Tourette's, ADHD as a co-occurring condition, and now it's all under the one umbrella. So everyone's unique, everyone's diagnosed, makes them very, very special, and it's our job at Autism Canada to make sure that your teams, whether it's your teachers, whether it's your teachers in training, whether it's your SEAC committee. We want to make sure that we are there to be able to offer you the best tools possible to make this an extraordinary experience for your students. So with that being said, one of the things that, or one of the aspects to going through the process as a parent, and I can relate to this, and just for the record, about 15 years ago, I knew nothing about autism. And since then, I've gone to school, I've gotten my degree in psychology, autism behavioral science. I'm certified as a behavioral therapist. All that to say that I needed to stop dead in my tracks when I knew that my son was special and that he was different. I didn't know what it was. I'd never heard of autism before. And it was my job as a parent to do whatever I could to get things moving. I didn't stop. I left a career that I adored. My husband changed his job so he can be on a regular schedule. We downsized our homes, we downsized our lives just so we could help my son. And it was very, very important to me. And he's a miracle baby. I wasn't supposed to have any. So I did everything I could as a parent to just milk it and do the best I can to give him the best tools and, whatever it is that he needed. I wanted to be that person, his go-to. In that, there's a process, and I didn't realize that it was really important to go through the motions as a parent, and it's grief. When a parent realizes for the first time that their child is unique and their child might be or is, after a diagnosis, on the autism spectrum, we need to grieve. And this is a very, very important part of the process in order to be able to move forward fully. You need to be able to take that time to go through the motions, and it's cyclical. So it's not, 2 weeks of taking it all in and of crying and of realizing that, your expectations and your hopes and dreams for your child may not ever happen. You have to go through a lot of the emotion, and you're good for a little bit, and then it comes back, and then you're good for another little bit, and then it comes back. And it's important to embrace it, and it's so important to learn from these processes, only because it will make you stronger as a parent, and it will give you not necessarily closure, but the motivation and the power to be able to push through and to navigate through this process. For those parents like me who didn't necessarily go through the grieving process initially, it hits you whether you like it or not. It may hit you down the road. The longer you wait to actually go through the motions, the more difficult it's going to be. So when you start to realize that you're feeling sad and that you're feeling overwhelmed and almost like you're mourning, this is completely natural. So get the help, get the support that you need. Make sure that your partner is on board and understands that you need to process and just go with it. It doesn't get easier, it gets better, and it changes, and you lower your expectations, and you celebrate the little successes and the small things, and you're going to realize down the road that when you do everything you can, it's worth it. They're amazing. I just get chills when I talk, when I think about what I had to go through as a parent. It's overwhelming, but I'm so proud. And, I hope that other parents can relate to how I'm feeling. Another important thing too, and like I mentioned before, is that whether or not you're grieving or you've gone through the grieving process and you're trying to navigate and move forward, it's important that parents and that teachers understand how important it is that you need to find your tribe. So families, parents, caregivers to children on the spectrum, find people who are living similar situations or who have gone through similar situations. The last thing you want to do is force your, special needs child or your autistic child to go to a birthday party of a little guy who's like super popular in class, and and they want to go to laser ops and play laser tag, and that your son may have some sensory processing and he just may not fit in. You are going to feel a level of guilt, and only because you want your child to have the same kind of fun as his other kids, but sometimes it's just too much. And unless you're in their shoes, where you understand the sensory processing aspect of autism, you don't know what kind of emotional roller coaster ride this could cause them. So you want to make sure that you're finding events that that can cater to sensory, like a lower sensory stimulating environment, something, whether even if it's, they'll have sensory friendly, movie days at the theater, or, a quiet kind of low key event where there can be one or two other kids, but find your tribe and find the events or the outings that are with others that are, going through the same things as you are. And I think it's important. For teachers, there's a lot. We have come a long way. And when I say we, I used to be a teacher, an assistant actually in UC back in the day. And from then until now, I feel that we've come a long way as far as acceptance and understanding and getting the supports that we need in school, but we always have more to learn. And a lot of it has to do with understanding autism and understanding sensory processing. And although, you'll have autism as a diagnosis for one of your students, their little bodies and their little personalities and their quirks and their sensory processing is unique to them. It's not a one size fits all. There are ways to accommodate, but every individual needs that special something to, that makes them tick, that makes them motivated, and that helps with the sensory processing. And although it's hard when you have a class of 18, 20, or 25, I'm not sure, how some of these teachers can do it in a day. It's incredible, but it's very, very difficult, if you have a class of 20 and you have, 18 kids with IEPs in your class. It's not uncommon in Ontario, where I'm from. It's very common, but it's a matter of finding ways to be empathetic to the parent and to the student, which I'm sure many of you are. Just take that extra step and ask the parents if they're okay. And I think that alone will make a world of difference. The fact that you are showing how you care about the parent, you care about the best, you want the best things for their child. You want to be able to help. And by asking the parent how they're doing and how they're coping and how they're navigating through raising a child on a spectrum, it will show it's something that the parent just needs to hear. Of course, teachers are, there was a time where I would often get, especially for my younger one, because he's severely ADHD and he can't sit still. I mean, this kid eats standing up because he's just so ready to go, and he's got to eat quick because he's got to do the next thing and the next thing. And the same applies in the classroom. And there was a time where the teacher was continuously sending me messages saying, well, he didn't do this right, and he didn't do this right. And as a parent, I thought to myself, this is discouraging. Is he doing anything right? And then finally I piped up and said, when can my child be autistic? When is he able to be himself? You are setting standards that are not conducive to his, his behavior. He's got an IPE or an IEP, and he's got a support teacher. And I need to know that he's not masking, that he's not forcing himself to fit in, because that just applies this excessive amount of pressure and stress on a child. And it only gets worse as they get older. So the teachers, it's okay to let the child be autistic. It's okay to let him, or her STEM in the classroom. And if it bothers the other students, then it's a situation where you need to teach the students how to be accepting to that and how to navigate through it, just like we need to teach our, kids with exceptionalities that they need to navigate through their day in a classroom. So everyone learns when there's someone on the spectrum in the classroom. Everyone needs to learn how to navigate through it and how to be empathetic and accepting. And this will offer a very inclusive classroom environment for everybody. Another thing I want to encourage teachers and parents to communicate to one another, I think it's just as important for the teachers as it is for the parents, is self-care. One of, I get meetings and interview requests with CTV News and Global News, and it's probably a part of my job that I hate the most, but I don't mind these little sessions. These are great. But when it comes to the big guns, you're always afraid that they're going to change what you have to say, or add a few words and make the entire interview completely different than what you hope for. But self-care can't be misconstrued. When a teacher will suggest to a parent to take care of themselves because what they might be going through could be very difficult, it's probably the best advice that you can give a parent or a caregiver. And teachers, I see firsthand how this online stuff is insane right now with the virtual learning. Like my little guy who can't sit still, he has to sit next to me in my office, and I watch his teacher, and she's overwhelmed. It's grade 3 students, and half of them can't sit still, and there's bouncing around. They don't know how to mute themselves. It's crazy. And I think at the end of the day, teachers, if you can take just an hour to yourself, whether it's to take your pet for a walk or whether it's to take a long hot bath or anything, but you need that self-care as well. I think we're all feeling the stress of the pandemic, and self-care is the one thing that I need all parents, caregivers, teachers, everyone needs to start taking care of themselves. Otherwise, you're not good to anybody. And one of the pieces of advice that I often offer caregivers and parents and professionals who are ready to have a mental break because they have students with exceptionalities in their classroom is basically, when you're flying, the attendants are always suggesting that, or they request that you put the oxygen on yourself first, because you need to be okay before you put the mask on the person next to you or the child that's flying with you. And otherwise, if you don't take care of yourself first, you can't take care of anybody else. So just think about it that way. I think it's a really good piece of advice. And I always think of flying in the mask. I don't know. I'm also a hypocrite because I don't take care of myself. The only thing I do is walk my dog at 5 o'clock in the morning, because the rest of my day is pretty much work. So coming from someone who knows. Understanding what a student with or without autism diagnosis may be experiencing. So oftentimes what can happen is, and I've seen it, the teacher may suspect that the child could be on the spectrum, and the parents could be in a stage of denial. Or the opposite, the parent may feel that the child is on the spectrum and the teacher may be in denial, or the teacher may feel that, he's a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old boy, he's got energy, it's very typical behavior. I'm sure that we all know in this day and age, milestones are no longer applicable. They vary anymore. So you can't really rely on milestones and textbook milestones, and between this age and this age, you should be doing this, and your child should be doing this. And I kibosh that, because it's, as a parent, it's one of those things where, if there's a delay in your child's development, as a teacher, if there's a delay in your student's development, and the minute you see a flag, it needs to be addressed, not necessarily to the parents right away, but teachers, if you're teaching a child with exceptionalities and that he's or she is unique, and you feel that, you want to be able to offer more to help this child, talk to your supervisor, talk to your principal, mention it to someone. It would be ideal not to go directly to the parent and suggest that their child could be on the spectrum. It's actually illegal to suggest that, but with the right words, you could certainly make the suggestion down the road using very, very mild language and mild suggestions. So if a parent comes into the classroom and suggests to the teacher or thinks that, their child could be on the autism spectrum because of this, as a teacher, whatever your gut tells you, if you feel that the student could be on the spectrum or you're convinced that he's not or she's not on the spectrum, just go with it. And all you can do is say, we're going to do our best to help them and to make sure that, they achieve. And the teachers, if you think or suspect that one of your students is on the spectrum, and you kind of want to bring it to the parent's attention, go through the proper channels first, because if the parent doesn't mention it to you first, there is a good chance that the parent may be in denial, and that's a very, very difficult wall or barrier to break. So consider the language that you're going to be using when it comes to it. Sensory processing disorder is, I'm sure that we're all aware what that is, but a child doesn't necessarily need to be on the autism spectrum to suffer from a sensory processing disorder. So basically, in very in lamest terms, sensory processing is when all of your senses are heightened. Fluorescent lights are very, very triggering, for example, when it comes to vision and when it comes to hearing. These kids with sensory processing can hear sensory the buzzing of the fluorescent lights. And I don't know if any schools still use fluorescent lights. I hope not, because they're not good for the environment, and they're not necessarily good for they're just not the best solution. Needless to say, there are certain things that someone with sensory processing can really, really struggle with, and may not, at a young age especially, a student may not have the right tools to navigate through sensory processing. So it would be important, and we have a lot of resources about that on our website, and I've gone through it as well personally with my two. We have a lot of information that could provide some more details about sensory processing and how this could affect someone on the spectrum or someone who simply has sensory processing. And I'll just give you a quick example. As an average person, we are typically known to have, well, I'm 45, so my hearing at this stage of my life is between 78 to 82%, which is still very good. I think I hear everything. I'm pretty sure I hear everything, but 82% doesn't sound like very much, but that's pretty much the average at my age. My son Kalem, he's had 2 surgeries already on his ears, and he's at 130%. So he hears almost twice as loudly as I do. And I remember the doctor from the sensory room in Ottawa, Chio, said, well, his hearing is as strong as a dog can smell. I'm like, what kind of analogy is that? But you've always heard that a dog can smell miles and miles away. Well, for Kalem, that's how his hearing is. So there's no secrets in this house. I can't keep a secret with my husband. If I want to talk to my husband, I have to go outside in our workshop and talk to him about, Christmas presents and birthday presents or whatever, because he can hear me. He's bionic. So that's just one example, but for, there's sensory challenges when it comes to tasting something new. My oldest also liked to have all the same colored types of food for the longest time. Everything needed to be golden brown. So pizza pockets, pogos, applesauce, peach compote or applesauce, iced tea, red apples, not green ones. Anyhow, it was all golden color. That's all he ate for about 4, maybe 5 years of his life. And it's slowly starting to change, but again, it's all sensory. So these are all little tips and tricks that will kind of help parents and teachers on how to navigate through the sensory processing. Virtual supports are also very, very important. So as a teacher, I'm sure anything that you have that is an image of transitioning to the next activity. If you have an image to help with the visualization of what that next activity is, it's very, very good for someone on the spectrum. It's good for little ones as well who are, neurotypical, only because it kind of helps them prepare for their next course of action. If there's no structure or official schedule or any visual supports to help someone on the spectrum especially transition from one activity to the next, it could lead to anxiety, stress, and behaviors. So that's a very, very good way to try to eliminate that. Underlying conditions may appear or develop with age. So for those teaching, and my heart goes out to you all, but for those teaching teens, 11, 12 is someone on the spectrum is, when you're on the autism spectrum, you are also known to start puberty a little bit earlier. The body is typically more relaxed if you're on and the same applies with Down syndrome. So the body is more relaxed, the individual is more relaxed, apparently, and this seems to cause an earlier onset of puberty. So don't be surprised if you have a female or male student in your classroom that is about 11 or 12 years old and that they've already begun some hormonal changes. It's very common for someone on the spectrum. But again, when you're looking back at sensory processing, so their senses are already heightened to begin with, and then they've got this hormonal, black cloud of this thing trumps everything. I need to process this before I can process all of my other sensories, and I'm just learning how to process and navigate through my regular senses, but now I got to deal with this. So this is a challenge. It's a struggle. It's very frustrating, and it could lead to some aggressive behavior. So it's up to the teacher and to the parents to see the signs, and if the signs are there, if one can communicate to the other, to open those lines of communication between the two, just to make sure that the child can have the tools that they need to navigate through puberty, because it's not easy, it's hard. And puberty is hard for any kid. For someone on the spectrum, it's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than that. And it takes a lot of energy to navigate through that. There's other co-occurring conditions, like I mentioned before, about the ASD umbrella, where you had Asperger's and you have ADHD, and there's depression, there's anxiety, there's PPD-NOS, there's RETs, there's Tourette's. Sometimes a child, or an adult who may be on a spectrum can often be misdiagnosed. And it happens a lot, especially with ADHD, where the child will be diagnosed with ADHD, but as they get older, their traits are actually more autistic than ADHD. They're very, very close in comparison when it comes to traits. So it's important to identify these little energetic bugs in your classroom who just want to go, go, go. And I think it's important to just kind of pay a little more attention. And if the parent is concerned, this would be a great opportunity for you to suggest strategies on how you would address an autistic child and or a child with ADHD, because a lot of the strategies are very similar. So and this could kind of open the lines of communication between you and the parent could possibly reach out to their family, doctor or the pediatrician, and start the process if the child hasn't been diagnosed yet. But there are very, very similar traits, and it's important that when they do go through the process that the parent has as much information from the school or from the teacher as possible to be able to bring that document with them to navigate the conversation with the doctor. Finding the right resources for the child. So for parents who are in this meeting, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a lot of funding out there, and it's just to know where to find it. And it's one of the things that I love to do is I love to do research for parents. And we cover all of Canada, so I have to be very aware of the funding that's offered provincially, and then of course the federal funding that's offered to families who have a child on the spectrum. And you know, I get Google alerts all the time. Sometimes there's grants that are available and there's a very short window, and this could be a grant for school who are teaching special needs, or for parents who are caring for a child on the spectrum. And it could be just for diapers, or just for, you know, a grocery support, or electricity bills, or there's so much out there. You just need to find them. And if the parents come to the teachers, if they approach you and say, we can't afford, you know, a Chromebook at home for virtual learning, you know, we have no income, we have no funding for our child, or we don't have enough, give them our information, because we are certainly on top of funding, and we'll find something. We'll find the money that they need to be able to get the items that their child deserves, to be able to strive and to be awesome. This funding as well can be applied for different things. For example, in Ontario, we have special services at home. We have the OAP, which is the Ontario Autism Program. There's the disability services. These funds that families receive for having, you know, a child on the spectrum up to the age of 18, and then after 18, they become adults and they get the disability pension. Those funds can be applied for respite. So Respite Care is basically having someone come in and give the family some respite, give them a break. So I, for example, have one that comes in the summertime, 3 mornings a week, and that respite worker is paid through my funding that I get through the provincial government and through the federal government. And they take my oldest to do grocery shopping, they do volunteer work, they do they bake, they cook, they do laundry, they mow the lawn. So a lot of life skills is where my oldest needs to develop, and you can hire a respite worker to do all of that. You just need to know where to be able to find the funding. And then as far as the resources for respite workers, we can certainly help find one for you. And then finally, there's the peer support groups for your child and the student, and for the parents. So teachers, if you see that the parents are struggling and they haven't found their tribe, they haven't found the families that are going through the same challenges as they're going through, I would be more than happy to provide any of you with you know, a list of online support groups specifically for parents. And then there's online support groups for teenagers who are on the spectrum. There is a lot out there, you just need to find them. And at the end of the day, I don't think a parent is really, you know, they're tired, they've had a long day, they're not prepared to start at a computer and start, you know, vetting appropriate you know, teen chat rooms. That's our job. Let us do that for them. So please, you know, share that information with them and let them know that we can certainly help with that. And that everything that Autism Canada posts, everything that we share, books that we recommend, groups that we recommend, all of that is actually vetted through our Autism Ambassadors. And our Autism Ambassadors are a group of individuals. I currently have 16 adults and 7 youth. They're all in a spectrum and they're all across Canada. And before I do anything, I vet everything through them. They are so important to me. And I mean, I may have 2 children on the spectrum and I may have a degree, but I'm not autistic. So to fully understand what an individual could be going through, I'd rather ask an autistic. And it's another piece of advice that I'm prepared to offer to anybody. There's a lot of groups that are autistic, ran by autistically run groups. And, you know, no one better to ask than the subject matter expert, who is the individual on the spectrum. So yeah, I could probably go on for another 45 minutes to an hour. I have so much to share, but I'm going to stop here and give your ears a break. And I want to say thank you to the SEAC committee for inviting me to present this evening, and to all of you who are here. So thank you very much for listening to me. And if you need anything, my contact information will be available on the slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominique, for that presentation. I'm going to turn things over to Louise right now. Louise Bellil is going to start our question and answer period.
Louise, your mic is off.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. If you have any more questions, please don't be shy. Stick them in the chat. Anything about SEAC or to our great speaker, Dominique. I will be reading each question and letting Dominique or Melinda answer each question depending on who it's for. The first question is for Dominique, and Dominique, how do parents go about finding their tribe, so to speak? Where could they look?
That's a great question. And I think first and foremost, especially right now with the pandemic, it's very, very difficult. Yeah, I'm not sure about Quebec. Well, I know Quebec's under quite the lockdown at this point with curfew, but Ontario is in the same position. So what we would do is you would basically send us an email and provide me with your location. I will do my best to find a bricks and mortar, which would be like an actual building where they would have peer support groups. But right now, I think we all know that that would not be available during a pandemic, but then we also have social groups. So Facebook groups, online groups of parents. So you tell me exactly what you need. And I have, groups of parents who are just waiting to talk to someone who is going through a similar situation. So that's the first step I would take, is I would go online and find friends in waiting, basically is what it's called, and kind of match them with like a specific group of parents that could help.
Thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm.
Second question, did you homeschool either of your children at any point? It's a two-part question. Second part is, what are the considerations to think about when deciding whether to homeschool or not?
These are great questions. So for the first part of the question, the first, oh gosh, I guess it would be, I'm not sure how it works in Quebec and Ontario. They went to French school, so pré-jardin, maternelle maternelle and jardin. So at the age of 4 and 5, my oldest had a therapist come here and work with him for 4 days a week for 6 hours a day. And they were doing IBI, which is intensive behavioral intervention. And then I realized that for the second part of the question, one of the most important aspects to teach a child on the spectrum is social, because that is probably the most difficult skill to develop when you're on the spectrum. And so I fought very, very hard, and I'm so glad I did. And I actually tapped into my SEAC, my SEAC committee in Ontario, Eastern Ontario, to get him in a school where he was able to do his IBI with his therapist in a little closet in the school, but he was able to do the social classes such as art and gym and recess and lunch breaks with his peers. And that was the best decision I've made. So homeschooling, I guess right now it's not much of a choice for anybody. But if you're going to make that decision to homeschool, I think it's really important to make sure that they are part of some organization or group, or make sure that there's play dates so they can develop and focus on social as well.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is, what resources can parents or educators use to help other students without ASD understand the student with ASD?
That's a really, really great question. So there are a lot of links and resources out there that are available. I know that I've provided a few to Letitia, but our website is currently under construction, but I do have a resource page on there that offer great videos for kids, for teens, for tweens, on how to learn more about ASD and how to build an inclusive classroom environment. And then they even have, I have some great tools on exercises on how to become a friend to a little one on the spectrum, how to develop friendship. And these are really great tools. Reach out to me and I'd be happy to provide those. Autism
Great.
Canada has a lot on their website. Yeah.
Okay, great. Next question. Thank you very much, Dominique. Next question is, how can teachers best advocate for their students with ASD in the classroom? Second part question, what should they ask for?
Okay, so as far as advocating, I think it would be important to, I'm not sure if the question means advocating with fellow students, like, or would the teacher be advocating on behalf of the autistic student to the other students?
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's what it means, yes.
Okay, so is this elementary level, I'm assuming? Yeah.
I would say at all levels, because I do believe they're different, but I don't have the person who gave me sent this question, so.
Okay.
I would say we try to do both.
All right. Again, like I said, I think it's important to not only use April, which is Autism Awareness Month, to educate students on how to be inclusive and how to be accepting, and do it all year. And there's nothing wrong with showing a video on occasion. And if there's a student in the classroom that is on the spectrum, and if they are verbal, ask them, what is it that your peers can do to make things better for you? And I think that would empower the student with ASD, and it would help educate the other students at the same time. But again, like, don't be afraid to share resources and videos on a regular basis to educate the classroom about autism.
Great answer. Thank you. How do parents find Respite Care in their area?
This is a great question. There are so many links, especially in Quebec. You have your, oh my gosh, your regional supports, the CL, I'm trying to think of the acronym.
CLSC?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, so you would probably reach out to the CLSC. Is that what it is? I'm sorry, I'm not good with acronyms. Yes, in their region. As long as they get funding first. But I mean, the way the funding works is that your child needs to be assessed, needs to have an official diagnosis, and then you need to apply for funding. There are, in Quebec, well, obviously all of Canada have the disability tax credit, which all parents who do have a diagnosis for their child should qualify for. If they don't qualify for it the first time around, it's important that they appeal and appeal and appeal, and get as many letters of supports as they can to advocate for their child, because they deserve that money. This is money that it's a disability tax credit, so it's meant for families because of all of the extra expenses that they have to be able to help their child. Then you have your provincial funding as well, and you need to apply for that. And sometimes it's annually, sometimes it's every 5 years. Then when you get this funding, it would be a matter of finding a caseworker through wherever it is that, for example, if your child was diagnosed by a specialist in the Montreal region, then that specialist, that psychologist his office or her office should have a list of providers for supports and services in their region that they could be referred to by the psychologist. In Ontario, we have a place called Developmental Services, and then they would be the ones that would have a case manager assigned to your child or to the family, who would then find all of these resources to help with respite, to help with extra funding, to help with paperwork, to help with whatever. So basically, in the end, once you get all the funding and all the ducks are in a row, you should find a case manager for your family, which would act as an advocate, and help navigate the family through getting everything that they need for their child to thrive.
Thank you very much for that information.
You're welcome.
Next question is, what should parents think about making provisions for their children with ASD should something happen to them? Sort of something like a will, I'm thinking, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
This is a two-part question again. The second part is, what are things they should consider when choosing someone as a caregiver in that respect?
Bless them. So first question, and it's near and dear to me, only because we have no one in my region. So my husband and I, we have no one, and our family is not involved, unfortunately. So we are going to be leaving our kids. Oh God, I'm hoping to God my youngest can at least make his way through. My oldest, we have a plan set. But anything can change based on, funding, based on circumstance, based on God knows whatever, wait lists. Anything can change, but the idea is to start now. I mean, if your child is in kindergarten or grade 1, they've just been diagnosed, start now. And I think why it's important is because so much can change. So for my oldest, for example, we have an RDSP for him. I don't believe he'll do post-secondary because he's currently in a life skills program. If he does, great, I'll pay for it, but he's got an RDSP, and then it goes into a Henson Trust that will manage, right? And it's usually a good idea to get a Henson Trust instead of going directly to your bank or to a lawyer, because again, the banks can change, your lawyer can change. A Henson Trust is always there. And what they are is basically a bunch of lawyers and bankers who manage those funds to ensure that your child is, as an adult, is set up accordingly. But then there's, you've got the younger one who has an RESP and an RDSP, and I'm thinking, okay, which one is he going to need the most? I think he's got potential. I think that he might end up going to university. He's extremely brilliant. He surprised me a lot over the years. So I'm going to take that RDSP and I'm going to throw into his RESP because I know he's going to need that. But the earlier you start, the better. And as far as trusting a caregiver, I don't know how to answer that because it depends on your circumstance and depends on the family. And if it's a respite worker that you need, you could find a family member or a neighbor. The funding will pay for that. You can't find direct family. You can't pay a parent or a sibling, but definitely a neighbor or, an aunt or an uncle or someone that a friend of the family's, or you can go through an organization that vet workers and they find a match for your child. And then you get to meet them and you get to interview them and you get to be picky about whatever. My opinion would be have that worker come into your home and work with your child while you're there. So you can kind of not be directly in their face, be in a separate room, but pay attention to what's going on, and then check out your child's behavior after the visit. See if if your child is happy or if your child is stressed or anxious, and then you'll be able to tell if it's a good fit.
Thank you for those points.
You're
In your
welcome.
opinion, Dominique, are medical professionals today, very familiar with underlying physical challenges in people with ASD?
Yeah. I shook my head very, very quickly there, but
it's just your opinion, so
it is an opinion. I can't speak on behalf of the organization. Yeah. However, the organization does advocate about, our government needs to do more. In every sense of the word, our government needs to do more. They've made some promises a few years back where pediatricians and nurse practitioners were supposed to get all of this extra education about autism and look for underlying conditions and, know more about characteristics and early signs. And that did not happen. And our, assessments are, if you go privately for an assessment, it could be up to $3,000 and it takes so long. The wait lists are incredibly long. So that's where I'm going to say no. I feel that there's not enough, but I mean, our pediatricians really, do they deal with psychological aspects and learning about medicine, or are they there to make sure that your child is in good physical shape and, meeting the whatever milestones that they have, their growth spurts, their weights and all that. But psychologically, I don't think that they're where they need to be. Sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so my next question comes, Do you have any tips for helping a child with ASD and ADHD learn how to socialize, or help parents to teach them to self-regulate? I know it's a 2-in-1. I know it's a little complicated, but
Nope, not at all. I'm living it. I am living it. So if this parent wants to reach out to me directly, I'd be happy to have a conversation. Essentially, there's a lot of information to answer this question. And I think it's a personal passion as well, but it's a matter of really understanding the child's behaviors. And you really, with a child with autism, a child on the spectrum who may be nonverbal, it's very difficult to try to wrap your head around what they're processing and what they're thinking if they're struggling with communication. So the first and most important thing is give them the tools to have a voice. If a child is ADHD and ASD, and if they struggle with their vocabulary, they struggle with communication, give them visual supports, like whether it's PECS or whether it's an AAC device or whether anything, give them a tool where they could fully communicate their needs. And this will help with anxieties and stress. This will help with better understanding, and it will also help with behavior and even aggression. When a child can't communicate their needs, they get angry. And this is any child. I mean, I'm sure we've all had toddlers at one point at 2 years old, they wanted a cookie. They couldn't tell you they wanted a cookie for some reason, and they just cry. And you have to work your way through the process and guess what it is they're crying about. Well, this is very similar in a way. You need to be able to understand what they're trying to communicate to you. And if they're not given the proper tools to be able to say what they're feeling or how to communicate their needs, there's going to be behaviors that are tied into that. I'm not sure if that answered the question.
I hope so. I'm sure you did. It was very informative. So thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
You had a lot of information there.
You have to cut me off because I can go on and on and on.
Well, we're recording it, so I'm hoping we can revisit it. And
yeah, sure.
Absolutely take the most important information and put it in our Q&As we're developing.
Awesome.
Next question is, how can we find information? Oh, sorry, I just lost the chat.
Oh.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
How can we find information on the accommodations the schools should be providing your child? Now, what are the resources when you feel the school isn't providing enough support? This may be a collaboration between SEAC and yourself, Dominique, because I think it's different in every school board and to every school.
Yeah, and I agree. One of my kids have been, he's been to 5 schools before he finally settled in, because the schools weren't providing, the resources that he needed to thrive. But then my other one has been in the same school since pre-K. So it depends on the school. It depends on the needs of the child. It depends on the level of, the level of support that the child requires, and the level of support that the school is prepared to provide to the student. Everything varies. There's so many moving parts. So I guess my suggestion would be to, collaborate with the school, communicate with the teacher, make sure that you are 100% on board with the IEP, make sure, and the IPRC, make sure that, before you sign anything, that you are 100% on board with what services and supports they're willing to provide the child. And essentially, if you're not happy with the results, reach out to the SEAC team.
Does anybody from SEAC want to respond, or perhaps Lisa in complementary services?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Dominique. If I just went back on a couple of those, since I just have a minute to speak, one of the things that I'd go back to is you were talking about the supplement for respite, and it's very, very similar in Quebec in terms of it's paid through Régie de la Rente, des Rentes in
Okay.
Quebec, and it's called a Handicapped Supplement. And so if a family is linked up with CISO in this region, or the C3S in their region, the CLSC, like you were mentioning, then they can access that kind of support through, it wouldn't be a caseworker with us, it would be a social worker. In Quebec, our social workers work very differently. They actually are almost in the same way a caseworker would be in other provinces, but the social workers act very much as an advocate within that system. And so they help parents get through applications such as that, accessing respite, looking at additional services. And also you were speaking about life planning. So they actually, we work with families when they're looking at, and I'm going to forget the term for it, but so that when critical decisions have to be made, I don't think it's called power, it's not called power of attorney, but the same type of thing. So when a child has disabilities and is unable to necessarily advocate for themselves, who would do that for them? And I know that the social workers do work with families to access that kind of support. So just to add that little piece.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so sorry. And the last question you asked was, sorry, I dropped it. What was the last piece?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll have to go to it.
You were asking about when things aren't working, you know, to the optimal level. So one of the primary things at the school level is that families need to work with, obviously, the teacher to see what they can do. If they don't, if they aren't able to resolve a conflict, or if they feel that further intervention needs to be in place, then they should speak with the principal or potentially a vice principal. But ultimately, the principal is responsible for the IEP and will make adjustments there. They usually reach out to a resource person at the school board, which could be a special needs consultant. We also at Western Quebec have, well, we will have two. Currently, we have one readaptation officer who helps families kind of navigate the system, the school system, and also supports the schools. We will have a second one who's, we've just posted for a second one because we had someone leave the first position. And we would work together with the families to see what we could do to resolve any difficulty that they're encountering. And ultimately, if that still is not resolving the situation, we do have the complaints process through the school board. And that is available through the website. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit.
Also, Lisa, yes, thank you very much, Lisa. Great points. Just a couple of things. One, I think when they were talking about accommodations schools should be providing, could you talk about the accommodations in link to the IEPs? And secondly, if the IEP is not really fully adapted to all the accommodations, how do we know what accommodations are there and available in the school? How can we find those?
Okay, so I'm not 100% sure I understand the question, but I believe what you're talking about is adaptations. It depends. Number one, Dominique, you spoke a little bit about the programming. So it depends on what program the student is in and how much flexibility we have in terms of curriculum, mandated, whether it's evaluations, whether it's expectations in terms of, so for example, at ministry, students who have certain adaptations, like you were saying, Louise, would have special conditions that they would be able to access when writing exams. And in terms of accommodations, those would be the ones I think you're speaking of, but I'm not really sure. In terms of adaptations, there's lots of things that can happen within the regular academic program. At Western Quebec, we also have what's called a modified academic program. So that would be when expectations or instructional levels or the complexity of the program is actually brought to the level that the child is working at. And then in Western Quebec, we also have what's called the life skills pathway. So we have different programs that address students with intellectual disabilities. So ultimately the program adapts to the student as needed. The family needs to be involved 100% in terms of ensuring that that IEP process and the collaboration is in place. And then ultimately in terms of accommodations, it depends on which program you're in. So in the regular program, we have to follow the ministry requirements. So an exam can't be changed, but we can adapt. We can adapt the situation, we can adapt the length of the exam setting, we can adapt the environment, we can provide different tools that may assist the student to get through different ministry expectations. And then in the other two programs, obviously they're at the level that the student is working at. So it's very different. So I think it really depends on what situation you're looking at. But if parents have questions like that, those are the exact questions that need to come up at the IEP meeting with the teacher, with the principal, and the other support people involved.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
Okay.
Okay, so 3 more questions, Dominique. I hope you
Sure,
have
yeah,
some
it's all
time.
good.
Okay.
Yep.
How forward leaning should parents be with teachers, schools when their student has ASD? And should they offer materials themselves? Should they volunteer in class, or what would help?
Oh, these are good questions. So for the first part, as far as volunteering, whether it's visual supports like PECs, I think it's important to have that open communication with the teacher, especially during, the IEP. If you are using, and sometimes it could be as precise as a specific kind of PEC or picto. Some kids at a younger age like the cartoonish forms of, PECs of whether it's a little boy eating or a little girl, flying a kite or whatever those PECs are. Some younger ones enjoy the cartoon ones. Me personally, I liked the images that had real faces of real boys and real girls. And, I tried to push diversity as well. And the school had one of the schools had very, very, well, they had board maker. I'm sure we all know what board maker is. Very simple egg shape kind of PECs. Not much emotion involved, not much detail involved. And I personally I struggled with it. I couldn't wrap my head around the egg shape faces. So I went to town and I printed all of these visual supports that we were using at home. And eventually I ended up buying this software and I donated it to Kalem's file. So as he went through, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, this followed him. And all of the visuals that I was working on, I would print doubles to make sure the teachers had them, because it's consistency. And that whatever it is that even now, whatever the school is working on with him or both boys now, they communicate with me so we could keep it consistent at home. There are certain things that, I would rather, there's certain ways that I would like for them to be doing things at home versus at school. And they need that separation. And I think it's important. And that's where the whole volunteering comes into play. I don't recommend it. I don't. If you want to volunteer at a school, pick a different school. Pick a different, special needs class if that's where you want to volunteer. I highly recommend that you do not volunteer at your child's school for so many reasons. And it's very, very difficult to, it's added stress for the teacher and it's added stress for you as a parent. So I don't recommend. They need to know that you are the parent and you are the stability at home, and that their teachers and their supports are their stabilities at school. And you need to have that division.
Great points. Thank you so much. So,
Louise, can I interrupt for one? I just thought of one other thing that Dominique raised that I thought it would be helpful.
You have the floor, Lisa.
Okay, sorry. I forgot it, and then I remembered it after. Another piece that you had mentioned, Dominique, you had mentioned technology. So it was very interesting to hear that there is potential funding. I don't know, and I'd love to find out how it works with Quebec residents and that whole piece. Because you did mention there was a federal piece and a provincial piece. So that's something that I think would be interesting to follow up on. But just so anyone else who was wondering in Quebec how it works, one of the factors is that the funding used to come through the Ministry of Health and Social Services. Then the funding was transferred to the school boards or the school service centers for the French sector at this point. And so what happens is that requests that are sent to what would have been referred to previously for students on the autism spectrum as Pavillon du Parc, which is they aren't referred to in that same way anymore. It's DDR. But in this program, since they can't access the funding, recommendations from professionals come to the school boards, and we have to manage those funds. So for students on the autism spectrum, we work very hard to make sure that our students have the technology that they need, whether it be a laptop, whether it be an iPad, whether it be a communication device, you know, a mini iPad with specific software that would support their communication needs. And then those devices actually can be purchased for the student individually, and it stays with the student through the school years.
Amazing.
We tend to try to maximize the use. So at the elementary level, there are a lot of shared devices at the school level. But once the child hits secondary, especially for the children on the autism spectrum, we find it very helpful for them to have their own device that carries with them throughout the year. So it's always about timing, because we can ask for the ministry to fund certain amounts for students, but we can't buy multiple over the years. So we do use some shared devices and some individually purchased devices. So I just thought would be helpful for anybody who is wondering about that.
That's incredible. Wow, that's impressive.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Okay, so our medical professionals, two more last questions.
Yeah.
So this may be a very similar question than earlier, so you just let me know. Are medical professionals today very familiar with underlying physical challenges in people with ASD?
That was the same question. I think whether it's underlying physical or, you know, when you're diagnosed with ASD, chances are you have a secondary condition, you have an underlying condition. That is sometimes you'll get to do a diagnosis. Oftentimes you don't. Now that they've kind of expanded, you know, it's a spectrum, and they call it spectrum for a reason. There are so many different aspects or co-occurring conditions that can fall under the ASD umbrella. Both my boys have the ASD diagnosis, but they both have a secondary. One's a physical secondary. Kenem has muscle atrophy, and Samuel has ADHD. So on their actual diagnosis, it's ASD, but these are common co-occurring underlying conditions. So as far as medical professionals go, when your child is going through the actual diagnosis with the medical professional, part of the screening will ask, are there any because part of the assessment is seeing an occupational therapist to get an assessment through them, and then to see a physio or, you know, a physiotherapist to get an assessment, and as well as speech. So if there are some physical challenges, that's where the occupational therapist and the physical therapist will be able to provide documentation to the psychologist who is doing the overall assessment, and they incorporate all of that into the initial. So if it's missed, if your child's having a great day and it's the day where they go and see their occupational therapist and they're feeling very agile and they're feeling like they want to walk in a straight line and they want to be very, you know, they want to show that, you know, they can use both hands equally and that's a great day, and that's going to be under their assessment. And, you know, it's 1 out of 1,000 days. So, you know, it's all about, it's a collaborative effort between several professionals. If you feel that there are some physical components that may not have come up during one of the assessment process, like one of the appointments, be sure to mention it to the psychologist. You need to mention it because they might take that extra effort. But it's one of those things where they're not going to automatically assume, because there are so many different underlying conditions. You need to make sure that you're communicating as much as you can with the professional so they can identify that in their assessment.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And Ray, your presentation was phenomenal. I'm going to give the floor. Thank you. I'm going to give the floor back to Andrea.
Okay.
And let her say her final words.
Okay.
Again, I'd just like to remind everybody that I am posting in the chat both our website and our survey link. If you could take a moment to fill it out, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. On to you, Andrea.
All right. Thank you, Louise. Thank you very much, Dominique. Your presentation has been fantastic tonight, and I really do appreciate you sharing your story. You do a wonderful job of weaving in your personal and your professional experiences, weaving those together. And your advice has been relevant to both teachers and parents tonight. So in our audience, I know we have both. And I really took away the importance that you shared with us of creating those connections. So the networks of people that you're going to connect with as a family, also the network to use to get services and advocate for your child. And then also that ever important self-care, whether you're teaching, whether you're a parent, we all need to make sure that's a priority. So I want to thank you very much again for your presentation. It's been wonderful to have you here tonight. And I want to remind our audience again, thank you for coming. Please fill out our survey to give us feedback about this presentation. And as well, we've got a lot of additional resources for those of you watching tonight. This can be found, there's a last slide up with some of our additional resources. And this, as well as the survey and the recording of the event tonight, will all be available on our webpage, which you can link through the Western Quebec School Board website. So please check out the SEAC webpage by going to westernquebecschoolboard.ca, and there you will find these resources and very shortly the recording from tonight's event. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. It was a pleasure to spend the evening with you.